Are you dreaming of a totally unique romantic escape, honeymoon, or even destination wedding? Or maybe you're just looking to add a little adventure to your relationship. Let And Beyond turn those dreams into reality with luxury and sustainability. For over 30 years, And Beyond has been curating unforgettable experiences that leave the world a better place in destinations like Africa, Asia, South America, and even Antarctica. Whether it's a private safari in Botswana, stargazing from a treehouse in South Africa, or finding true peace at their stunning river lodge in Bhutan, And Beyond has got you covered. Their collection of lodges and camps offer unmatched privacy, untouched landscapes, and unparalleled romance. And here's the kicker. Honeymooners get 50% off one partner's And Beyond accommodation during their stay at selected luxurious properties in Africa, Asia, and South America. So whether you're celebrating a honeymoon, anniversary, or just want a wildly romantic getaway, And Beyond delivers romance with a positive, sustainable impact at every turn. Check out their lodges, camps, and itineraries at www.andbeyond.com. And when you're ready to book your ultimate romantic journey, reach out to me directly and we can get started. Thanks to And Beyond for supporting our Passport to Love series. Are you tired of the same old dating scene in your local area? Do dating apps leave you more frustrated than fulfilled? And what about those magical travel romances? Why do they seem to happen so effortlessly? What if I told you the secret to falling in love is off the apps and into the wide expanse of the world? This month, we're bringing you our Passport to Love series, an exciting collection of stories from around the globe where travelers found love in the most unexpected places. Stay tuned. Love and adventure awaits. Hi, I'm Kelly Tolliday, founder of Transform with Travel, and your trusted guide to life-changing adventures. Here, we help you dream big, plan smarter, and embark on your next journey without stress or overwhelm. This isn't just about booking trips. It's about reimagining what's possible for yourself, one adventure at a time. Today, we're bringing you one step closer to your greatest travel dreams. So buckle up because we are about to take off. Hey there, welcome to the Transform with Travel podcast. This is part of our Passport to Love series where we're sharing stories of adventurous travelers falling in love while on the road and making the relationships work despite all odds. Today, we have Esther Milanzi here to share her story, so welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
And we've actually known each other since 2015. So it's been it's 10 years this year, which is
Oh, wow.
wild. Yeah, I know. We met in Thailand and both of us were teaching English in the same little coastal town in Southern Thailand. So I've actually met your partner, Lo, and I'm so excited to share your story and be able to give people a glimpse into what an unconventional way of living your life, especially if you're in the education sector. Like, so many opportunities out there for you. But of course, the bulk of this story is around meeting Lo and meeting your partner. So thanks so much for joining and for sharing your story today.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm so excited to share about our journey. It's an anecdote now when we talk to people about how we met our partner abroad who lived around the corner from us back home. And we moved miles and miles away and we ended up meeting each other. So it's a fun story and I'm excited to share. And I'm grateful for you to, reconnect with you after all this time as well.
Yeah, for sure. And so I'd love for you to start, like, where were you in your life? Like, what was going on for you before you met your partner? Like, giving a little bit of a backstory.
Sure. So I grew up in North Carolina and I'm not going to go back that far, but I lived on the East Coast for most of my life. I taught in Florida when I was getting my grad degree, and then I taught in New York City. And then I left the US in 2014 for a Fulbright scholarship and I moved to South Africa. And it was a life-changing event getting to meet some of my biological family, really realizing that living abroad was for me and teaching was something I really, really loved doing. And I was supposed to go back to the States at the end of my contract after the 10 months. And I decided that I wanted to stay abroad. And my sister was just finishing her Teach for America contract. And so we decided we would meet each other in Thailand. And we knew nothing about Thai culture or the Thai map. And so we knew that if we both got jobs, we would be near each other. So I got a job at a tiny kindergarten in Suratani, and she got a high school job in a place called Calasin. And when we looked at the map, we realized we would be 20 hours from each other by
Oh no.
land. We had no
Oh
idea how
no.
long Thailand was. And so we were both like, you know what, let's just try this out and see what happens. And so we moved there and we had an amazing time. And it was shortly after that that I met Lo. So it's super exciting.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the story of the how and the when and the where. Like, give me all the details of when you and Lo crossed paths in Thailand,
Yeah.
I guess, because I know a
Yeah.
little bit of your story is that you were kind of orbiting around
Yeah.
each other for a while. But in Thailand, let's talk about when you first kind of like locked eyes and realized that it was something special.
Yeah, so it was funny. It was a guy named Matt. Shout out to Matt. We always say thank you to Matt.
Oh,
He
wait,
is
I have
our
a Matt. I have a Matt who I went to when I went to Ireland with my friend Matt. That's when I met Sam.
Oh, amazing. See, it's like we always have to thank Matt,
We
at all
always
of the
have a
big
Matt.
events. So our Matt, he's Canadian and he was obsessed with J. Cole, who is a rapper from Lowe's hometown in Fayetteville. And when he found out I was also from North Carolina, he got super excited and he was like, "Oh my gosh, have you met Lowe?" And I was like, "No, I haven't met Lowe." And he lived one town over. I was still quite new to Suratani, to Thailand. And he was like, "Okay, well, you have to meet. I think you guys are going to love each other." And I was just like, "Okay." And the way he described it is, you have to meet Lowe, this guy from Fayetteville with a fro. And I was just like, in my head, immediately I could picture who this guy was. And I was like, wow, this white guy from Canada was like, you have to basically, without saying it, was like, you have to meet the only other Black person. It's like, for those of you that are listening that don't know, Thailand now is like super diverse and there's lots of different people traveling from all over. But when we lived there, 10 years ago, there wasn't that many
Mhm.
expats, at least not in our town, regardless of where they were from, but there were very little people of color. So it was super, in my mind I was like, okay, this is what he's basically telling me. And I was like, well, I feel like that's kind of like stereotypical. And apparently he kind of did the same spiel to Lo. He was like, you need to meet this woman from Durham, North Carolina, with dreadlocks. And so he kind of had the same little, we were kind of like trepidatious at first, like, okay, why
Yeah.
are why are they trying to put us together? And we met in the town that's in the middle. There is this little town called Kanam, and it is just the most magical place on earth. And it's about an hour in between both of our cities. And all the expats would go there at this little reggae bar and just, vibe out under the stars with like the bioluminescent plankton in the sea. And it just felt like the most magical place on earth. And every time we go back to visit, we still think of it as that. But it was I think maybe fifth anniversary or second anniversary. I can't remember the anniversary, but it was an anniversary party for Jambe. And we met that night and we hit it off under the stars, chatting about anime and about life abroad. And we were just kind of like geeking out about how we were kind of cut from the same cloth and just like a little bit, we didn't know the term then, but we were both definitely neurodivergent kids growing up. So we felt like outsiders where we were
Right.
from. And so we found a place of belonging, a place of home in Thailand. And so we kind of connected on that.
I love that, and I love that you just brought up djembe because it just got flooded me with memories for those listening that have not been to Kanam, which many people don't because it's like a local beach, and then it's where all the teachers from Southern Thailand will converge on the weekends and let off some steam. But Djembe is like this, like you said, it's like this little reggae. They have little huts. They have a stage for people to sing. It was an honor system. You just go behind the bar and get a beer and then like write your name down if you have a drink. Like you go down to the beach. It's truly it was a place where people of all different cultures and all different backgrounds really converged together under this shared experience of teaching in Thailand and being an outsider. Like you said, back then there was not many expats in our town. This was not a Bangkok. This was not a Chiang Mai. This is
Right.
not a Phuket. And so when you guys met, Matt introduced you guys and you guys had a chat. Like, was it one of those things where you're sharing things quite early on where you're like, whoa, I would never tell someone this like on a first date back home or something like that? Like, what was that like for you realizing how much you were talking and sharing so early on?
Yeah, I think it was quite interesting for both of us. We were both seeing other people at the time. Neither of us were seeing
Oh,
anyone seriously,
right,
but
right.
I think we both had a moment where we're like, "Whoa, this is unexpected." And it was the next time that we saw each other, which was a month later, where we kind of delved deeper and we talked about past traumas and we talked about things about identity and just belonging and just kind of like we really went there. And it was from that moment on that we unintentionally became life partners. It was just the second time meeting and, the first time really intimately connecting. And it was transformative. And it was, I remember thinking the next day, like, whoa, what is this?
Love is in the air, especially if you're out exploring the world with someone special. From sunsets in Italy to steamy nights in the mountains, Best Day Brewing is there to keep the romance brewing. With craft non alcoholic beers that are chock full of flavor with none of the booze, Best Day Brewing supports your romantic getaways by keeping you present and energized for every moment along the way. For Valentine's Day and every day, raise a glass to hoppy endings. Learn more and shop at bestdaybrewing.com or at Best Day Brewing on Instagram. Cheers to your best day yet.
Yeah, and it was just like this sense of safety with a person that I don't think I'd ever felt before. And, I talk about it now. It's like, how much better can it get? Because it continues to get better. And so that is something that's super interesting to me. And, I think we were conditioned in society to feel like love has to be hard and that you have to fight for love. And this was the complete opposite experience for me from day one. The entire time it was just like a continuing of softening of myself, of finding safety to fall apart, if that makes sense, to then
Mm.
unravel and decondition and figure out who I really am in a way that doesn't fit the rules that society has given us.
Yeah, wow. That I just got chills when you said that. I remember people always asking me, well, about like the love story and the this and like Sam and I was always just like, there's parts that are challenging, but I had always been, like you said, conditioned for it to got to work hard at it and fighting is normal and this and and I'm kind of like, but this feels too easy then. It feels too easy. Like I don't have to work that hard. I don't understand. I don't have to like make him love me. He just loves me.
Well, and that was actually the biggest challenges that we had was my own self-sabotage in the beginning when
Mm,
it was almost like right after the first kind of little bit of time where, you know, I I almost kind of like tried to push it away. And it was me realizing like, okay, well, what has my frame of reference been? And it's been, my favorite movies growing up was Love and Basketball, The Notebook. And those are two really quite toxic movies when you kind of like dissect them now with a
mhm.
lens of awareness. And to be in a partnership and in a relationship where there wasn't emotional manipulation, where there wasn't intense jealousy, where there was just this like deep acceptance of who you are was not, I wasn't comfortable with it. I was really actually quite uncomfortable with safety and with this like level of respect. I wasn't used to it. And so like we had a lot of discussions around that and realized that we were both creating this new reality for ourselves. And yeah, I'm super, super grateful. And we talk about it to people now. We were recently at a workshop that my friend put on for a retreat, and it was called Legendary Love. And we were just talking about how, I think still in society, we're seeing it a little bit more in Hollywood where we're seeing healthier relationships, but we don't really have a lot of examples for people to kind of look to show like there are beautiful ways to be in partnership.
Yeah, totally. So you guys had met in John Bay, and then you said that you went back a month later because usually there's like these, monthly big parties that everyone converges for. And he lived about an hour south of where we were. So how did that progress with you guys in terms of keeping in contact or continuing to evolve the relationship? You also mentioned that you were casually dating both of you different people. So kind of to walk us through the next few steps of the relationship as you start to realize how serious it was getting.
Yeah. So the first 6 months were actually quite hilarious because we didn't exchange phone numbers for a very long time.
Oh my
And
God.
the second time we actually met, he actually came to my house because we were having a going away party. I don't know if you remember the big house, but there was like this mansion that
Yes,
my colleagues and
yes,
I worked at. We lived in
yes.
this mansion and each of us had our own floor and we always had these massive parties. And we were having a going away party for this guy named Luke. And Lo was friends with Luke. So Lo came to the town. And I was no longer seeing the other guy I was seeing. So when he showed up at our doorstep, kind of early, I just kind of like I had like goo goo eyes and I was like, oh my gosh, this is that guy. And we hadn't spoken since that night. And so I was like, okay. So yeah, so that was like the night that everything like went down and we had that long chat and we just kind of like realized like, okay, this is awesome. So then he leaves a few days later because I kind of kidnapped him and made him stay. And so he leaves a few days later and he actually borrowed my bike, which sounds ridiculous on paper, but
Like your
like
motorbike?
my motorbike,
Oh,
because he
wow.
missed the bus back to his town to get back to work on the Monday morning, and so I let him borrow my bike, and we didn't exchange phone numbers, and it sounds wild when you think about it now, but I just was like, "I'm gonna go back to Jam Bay next weekend. Let's meet back up, and I'll get my bike from you then," because I was able to walk to work. Surat Thani is so tiny in that way.
Mhm.
So, the next weekend, we met back up, and he had my bike, and it was just like, we just caught up and it was like there was no expectations and it was super chill. And then it just kind of kept going like that. There would just be like, he would show back up in my town with a book and his guitar on my doorstep. And I'd be like, okay, come in. And we just had this like really easy flow. It was almost like a telepathic communication. And then it wasn't until we went on our first big trip together. I think we went to Copenhagen and my sister came and like I had friends visiting in town. And I was starting to realize like, oh, I think I'm starting to like have feelings for this guy. And I was like, I don't even have his number and da da da. And so like we ended up exchanging numbers and we just kept getting to these little like milestone moments where we were like, whoa, this is getting deeper than we thought it was going to. And like
Mm.
everyone around us kept being like, no, you guys are in a relationship. And we were like, no, we don't want to put any labels on this yet. This is like, we're not really sure how to like even navigate this. And then I think it was like 6 months in, we both said I love you to each other. In Thai, it was very cute. And I can't remember what it is for men, but I said Chan Rakun and in return as he said it in Thai. And it was just super beautiful. And then I think 6 months later after that, he decided to end his contract at his school in Benjamin in the Kansi Tamarat and moved in with me in Sartani. So it was like probably
Oh,
like
awesome.
6 months of us just kind of not really putting a label on it, just kind of chilling, just kind of figuring it out. And then about 6 months of us dating seriously. Then it was just like we're in this forever.
Right. Right. No, and sometimes you especially when there's possibility of, leaving your contracts and going somewhere else, or where are we gonna move
Yeah.
to now? What's your plan? Was this just a year of fun and you're gonna go home to the US? Are you in it? Are we going around the world? Because you mentioned you wanted to live a life abroad. So what were kind of those conversations happening? Like, was he planning on living abroad full time, or was that kind of something that morphed in with your dream as you as you got
Yeah.
serious?
So that first night, well, the second night when we reconnected and we kind of like had that long, big chat, we kind of shared all of that stuff. It was almost one of those things where we were like, let's put all of our stuff on the table. And if anything comes from this, we'll know going in. So we did a lot of like, here's my trauma, here's how my trauma responses are. It was really wild that we were so open in that way. So a lot of that stuff we kind of got out of the way in the beginning. And then people say, like, believe people when they tell you who they say they are, and I think we just did. And I think that
Mm,
that's rare too. It's often like you kind of want people say something and then you kind of are like, oh well, maybe that's just them now, maybe they'll change, or and we just kind of allowed ourselves to be who we said we were. And then we both realized we didn't want kids. We both said we wanted to live abroad, and so we were just like, we kind of just went with that, and that manifested into the next kind of chapters. So we were at the end of my contract in Thailand, and we were kind of toying around with what's next because he had moved. He wasn't really liking his jobs the same way he liked in his old town. We talked about maybe going back to Nakhon, and then we actually got a phone call from a good friend, Rick, which I'm not sure if you remember Rick. Super
I don't think
tall,
so.
long dreadlocks, hippie from South Africa. Love him.
Oh, it's not ringing a bell.
Okay. So he gives us a call and he's living in Vietnam and he was like, "Guys, come to Vietnam." And so Lo and I were like, "Great, let's do it." And like it wasn't a big discussion, and that's just kind of like the beauty of me and Lo. We found out later in human design we're projectors.
Oh,
And
so
so
am I.
okay, so
Yeah.
you should know like the invitation is everything. And so
Mhm.
we joke about the fact that we got invited to meet each other, and then almost every place we've moved, we've been invited to move there. So that's been kind of like the journey. So we followed that invitation to Vietnam and we loved Vietnam. It was so beautiful. So like we lived around this beautiful lake in Tejo, which is in Hanoi, like this little expat town. I was walking distance from my school, but the pollution was quite intense for us.
Mhm.
And then back when I was in grad school, I had this dream of learning from green school. And so I got an email inviting me to apply for the exact role that I had at in
Wow.
Vietnam. So I was like, okay, this feels aligned. And so I showed it to Lo and he was like, go for it. I applied. I got the interview the next day. I got hired the next week and we moved the next month.
Can you share what green school is for those who don't know?
Sure. So Green School is a school for sustainability in the jungle in Bali. And it was started by a Canadian guy back in 2010. And yeah, it's just grown. Now there's a campus in South Africa, a campus in New Zealand, and I think they're opening campuses in Mexico and Portugal next. So it's a
Wow.
super,
Wow.
super progressive way of looking at education, looking at it. The curriculum was created and co-created by teachers, by lots of different sustainability experts. And it just was something that both Lo and I thought was super, super cool and exciting. And so we moved there. I started teaching middle school literacy and thematics, which is kind of like social studies. And then they met Lo and fell in love with him like I did and created a job for him 6 months later.
Oh, wow.
And it's actually funny because it was my boss there that recommended that we get married because Green School did this great thing where they gave you partner visas even if you weren't married. They had the ability to do that, but they were like, we don't know how long we'll be able to do this. And so my boss was like, I don't say this to most people, but you guys seem like you're legit. And I was like, yeah, we're life partners, but neither of us really wanted to get married. We both grew up in homes of split homes. And so for us, it didn't
Mm.
feel like it was necessary. And then, yeah, so we decided that we would get married for visas so that way we could continue to travel together no matter what. And so after she said that to me, I came home with ring pops and a bottle of red wine for me, a bottle of whiskey for him. And I was like, are you trying to do this thing? And he was like, yes. And so like we got engaged probably like a month before we decided to get married. And we went back to Kanam in Thailand and did our little ceremony with rings made by one of the ladies at Jambe at sunrise on the beach where we met. And it was super, super beautiful. But if you know anything about getting married abroad, it is very difficult if you're not from that country. And I like scoured the internet for all the to-dos and all the different things. And when we went to the US Embassy to get this piece of paper to say that we both weren't currently married, the woman at the counter, this is a sweet Southern lady from the US, and she was like, "Did you do this by yourself, girl?" And I was like, "Yes." And she was like, "Oh, bless your heart." And as soon as she said, "Bless your heart," I was like, "Oh
Oh,
no."
no. Oh,
And
no.
she let us know that they had changed one form that you needed like 2 days before, and it hadn't gone live on the website yet, but they still were making people do
Oh,
it.
no.
And so we would have had to leave the embassy, remake an appointment, which sometimes takes like weeks. And then we had to pay like this other fee and da da da. And so we were only in town for like a week. So we didn't have time to do that. So I was like, boo-hooing on the steps. And Lo was like, let's just still have our ceremony. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, and so we did, and it was beautiful. And he was right. When we got back to Bali, they offered him his job. So we didn't actually need the marriage for the visa for there, but we decided like we're here now, let's just get married for real, for real. So we planned a wedding tour. So the next time we went back to the States was in 2018, and we'd gotten married on the beach. Our ceremony was December 2017. And so we went back to the States in June of 2018, and we planned this like 6-week adventure. And we made a Google Doc of all the different places we were going where we had friends and family. And we invited everyone to fill in on the Google Doc where they wanted to meet up with us or how they wanted to celebrate us, because we were like, we can't bring gifts back with us. And
Yeah.
we didn't
Yeah.
want to have like a big wedding where everyone had to come, because we just knew not everybody financially could do it. And also because we lived abroad, neither of us had been home in 2 years. So we were like, it's not going to feel like we're going to get that good quality time with people. So
Right.
everyone signed up for whatever they could afford time-wise and money-wise. So like some people signed up to take us out for a cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. Some people signed up to take us on like a wine tour or a whiskey bar. Some
Oh, I
people
love
signed up to
this. What a cool
do laser
idea.
tag. Some people signed up to throw a little mini party for us in their neighborhood if like we had a lot of friends and family in that area. Some people couldn't make it, and then they purchased a bus ticket for us or a flight, and it was just the most magical way to celebrate. And we just celebrated our love for 6 weeks, and our we officially signed at City Hall in New York during Pride weekend, and it was the most beautiful, beautiful. Like we showed up in our street clothes, and like the people had the most elegant ball gowns and like wedding dresses and tuxedos, and we were like, oh, we should have dressed up more.
We're underdressed.
100%. But it was just so beautiful. And, now we're at 7 years married, and it's been 10 years since we met in 2015.
I love
Yeah.
this. I love that idea so much too. And I think the one thing that keeps coming up for me is just making it your own. Like you've made your relationship your own, you've made your life your own. And what I really love is how upfront the two of you were about what you wanted. And of course, your wants can change, but typically your values don't. And I think that was really important for you guys in terms of setting that foundation of what you wanted out of life and being really upfront with that and then going for it 100%. I love how trusting you are of each other's decisions and choices. You mentioned that you grew up in North Carolina and that he was also from North Carolina. Can you talk about the moment when you realized you may have been kind of circling each other for quite a long
Girl.
time?
So this is when I like, for those of you that are not woo, I'm so sorry, but I'm super woo. So apparently the universe has been trying to get us together for a long time. I graduated from high school in 2005, and I got an acceptance letter to a college that I did not apply to. And I got a full ride scholarship to go to this college. And I remember opening it and being like flabbergasted. I was like, I don't even know what this college is. I don't really even know this town. It wasn't too far from my home. And if I could go back and like whisper wisdom into young 18-year-old Esther and my mom, I would have been like, ladies, like get it together. So I got this acceptance letter, and it is the town that Lo is from, and it is the college that he was at the exact same time. So
Wow.
I feel like the universe was like, come on, y'all, we want you to meet. I mean, we talk about it all the time, though. If we had met at that exact time, we probably would have just been like, nah, you're good. Because we were such opposites at that point. But then a few years later, he actually moved to the town where I was in school and was a bartender at a club that my friends and I used to frequent. So
That's so
I'm
crazy.
sure he's poured my drinks before. And then years later, after grad school, I moved to New York to teach at Columbia as an adjunct professor and to be a nanny for my cousin. And we lived down the street from each other at the same time. He was living with his cousin, and I was living with my friend in East Harlem, and he was in West Harlem. And I was just like, the universe was definitely like doing some weavings, but it makes me feel really this sigh of relief also. As much as we kept missing each other, it was like the universe kept being like, okay, they're not ready. You're not ready. And then we met in Thailand when we were ready. And
Yeah.
I think about who we were then also. Neither of us would date the versions of us from back then, but we just so beautifully have like calibrated together and grown together and like allowed ourselves to release old versions of ourselves. And that's the thing, that the deepest gift I think of our relationship is, just as we allowed ourselves to be who we said we were then, we continue to do that now in each iteration, and we continue to change hobbies and friendships and desires and the ways that we outwardly manifest who we are, and we both continue to just let us be who we are. We don't hold on to the old version. So if like last year he was into something, I'm not like, oh, I miss who you were when you did X. It's more, I'm appreciative of that version of you, but I'm so appreciative of this new version of you. And it's like, because we both allow each other that space, we both can continue to grow without feeling constricted.
It's so beautiful. And I love when you mention who you were before you guys met, even though you were in the same areas, wouldn't have been people that you necessarily would have maybe caught your eye or even like just been interested in the way that they were presenting themselves. What do you think it is about the act of having been in Thailand in and of itself? What do you think having been in a different country and this person you have been kind of circling around unknowingly for so long? What do you think about being in a different country that helped you kind of open up to him or open up to
100%.
the idea of him?
And I talk about this a lot, not necessarily about with Low, but just in general, what each country has done for me. And like for me, South Africa is where I healed some ancestral wounds that I had and like got to heal my root chakra and like sacral chakra energies. And then moving to Thailand was inner child healing. I was just frolicking. I was free. I was like, I'd released these expectations that society had of me. So I was just showing up unfiltered and it was messy and it was raw and it was just who I was. And I feel like it was similar for Lo. He had moved to Kuwait before, right before he moved to Thailand. And that was where he kind of first did some healing of some things that he was going through in America. And then in Thailand, it was kind of the same. So we kind of met each other in this really beautiful moment of it wasn't our first country abroad. So I think that also had something to do with it. Like if we had met in our first countries, there might have been more friction, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily with each other, but just there's friction the first time you leave your home because there's so much you don't realize is conditioning, or there's so much you don't realize that is your comfort zone. You don't really know what your comfort zone is until you come out of it a lot of times. And so we both had kind of already done that. So it was like we met each other in this really free state. And then Bali, I always say, is where we've done most of our like coming into our spiritual gifts and like being really comfortable with who we really are. We're more in like our, our third eye and like our throat chakras and our crown chakras. It's kind of like we get to kind of like play in who we are.
I love that you are bringing in part of the chakras because although some people might be listening that might not know exactly what they are, a lot of people that listening do because we do focus a lot on transformation in this podcast through the act of traveling. And the way that you just described it for those who are listening who don't know what chakras are, we're speaking about a process of ascension and a process of moving through your childhood into adolescence, into adulthood, and like all the different things that we could heal from that. And where you are now is in a place of knowing and a place of vision and a place of, clarity. And so I love that you talked about that through the process of your relationship together. What do you think that you've learned the most about yourself through this relationship?
Wow. I think that's such a hard question. And I remember when I looked at it, I was like, huh, how am I going to answer that? But I think I'm still learning. But I think that is it. And I kind of mentioned it before. It's like the gift of safety to explore, and that I don't have to have this deep attachment to who I am in order to be myself, if that makes sense.
A
It's
hundred
like
percent, 100%.
no definition of me is definitive. And I think in every iteration, I feel safety and I feel this deep sense of unconditional love from Lo. And I feel like he feels the same for me, that we can explore whatever version of ourselves that we want to be, which just feels so incredibly freeing. And sometimes it manifests in like this super mundane, we just show up in our PJs and he's crocheting and I'm reading my book and drinking tea, and it's like parallel play at its best. We also know that if I'm like, okay, I want to go skydive tomorrow, he'll be like, okay, let's go try that out. It doesn't ever feel shocking when we decide to pivot because we have given ourselves that space. So it's like I've learned how to be limitless with him.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's like the most powerful part of being in a relationship that is founded on safety as well is the ability to be anything that you want and know that you have a safe place to land, even if you fall or, even if it's a failure or whatever. I think that that's such a beautiful place to be in. And I'm really happy for you guys. If someone was listening and they have met someone abroad or they have a big pivot, like the word pivot that you use, they have a big pivot that they can make or they have an opportunity, like it doesn't even have to be a relationship. What advice would you give to that person that's listening that might be a little fearful or have stories around, not being able to go after what they want?
Yeah, I would say two things. One is be brutally honest with whoever it is that you're meeting for a relationship or friendships when you're abroad. This is your time to do it. I think there's so many opportunities for us to shrink ourselves or diminish who we are not intentionally, but just because, again, that conditioning that we get in our hometowns, in our home societies, we don't always feel safe to be honest. And we can kind of get those negative reactions sometimes. Whereas when you're abroad, yes, you will still get those reactions sometimes, but you can choose. There's so much more intentionality. So choose to be honest. So that way you're aligning and attracting the people who are going to complement that. And the other is really start listening to your body, like trust your intuition. Your intuition will guide you. I felt safe immediately with Low and I trusted that. And I think that's not something that I always listened to when I was back in the States. You know, maybe I felt uncomfortable with someone, but I forced myself to sit through it because my cousin's friend introduced us and I felt obligated. And so I think trust your body to point you in the right direction.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I think we got so much more than just a story about a relationship. Like it was really, yeah, you left me with a lot to think about. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share it. I'd love for people to be able to connect with you online. Can you share like what you do and how people can connect with you either online or however?
Sure. So currently I am a intuitive coach under the brand SD Ubuntu, but I am doing a little bit of a reshift at the moment and I'm moving into a brand identity called the Neuro Spicy Oracle. And it's where I'm really working with neurodivergent intuitives or helping people to come into their intuition if you're neurodivergent, basically accessing your superpowers as kind of creating a little bit of a magic school. But I still do have offerings under SD Ubuntu at the moment. I do oracle readings, I do intuitive coaching.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciated reconnecting with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kelly. I've really loved this.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. A huge thank you to our amazing sponsor, And Beyond, for supporting the Passport to Love series. If you're dreaming of a unique honeymoon, a romantic getaway, or even a destination wedding, And Beyond has been creating transformative experiences for over 30 years across Africa, Asia, South America, and beyond. Visit andbeyond.com for more information and stay tuned for the next episode in our Passport to Love series.